Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist and craniosacral therapist for animals and people in Western Massachusetts, and this is Tristan Corgi. We're here for episode 6 of Conversations with a Corgi. Tristan has a new improved booster seat so that you can see him since he sinks during these sessions. And today we're going to talk about, because it's Sunday and other things, a spiritual dog walk and what that means and why would we want to do that. Animals connect us with nature. They are an important part of our lives in keeping us close to the planet and to the earth and the nature around us. And even if you live in a big city, having a pet, even a goldfish, can keep you grounded in a way that you wouldn't find if you didn't have an animal in your life. So animals are in our lives and we want to have a relationship with them. So a spiritual dog walk can deepen your relationship with your pet and with yourself and with your relationship to nature. Being with our animals outside allows us to connect with nature in a way that we can't otherwise. And it helps us find meaning in our lives and in our relationships with our animals. And the most important thing about having a spiritual dog walk is that it allows us to experience love with our animal and the animal's love for us while we're outside. One of the things that you might have remembered hearing about is a book by Rupert Sheldrake. He's a researcher, British researcher, who wrote a book called Animals Who Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home. And in that book, he detailed research with cameras and things placed on pets in their home environment who seemed to always know how to go to the window or the door to greet their person when they were coming home. They tried having the person come home at unexpected hours and not in the same car or maybe on foot. And they even had the person come home when the person didn't know they were coming home and kept the cameras on the pets and found that many, many, many times the animals still somehow managed to meet the person at the door. Now, was this telepathic communication? They had ruled out the possibility of smell. Rupert came up with the idea of morphic fields. And morphic fields are like bubbles around our bodies. And we have them, and so do our pets. And so one thing that happens when we're connected with our pets, those overlapping bubbles of morphic fields come together and become one circle. And as we get further from our pets, they stretch, 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 and yet you can still feel that presence out there, which is how when you're traveling, you can still connect with your pet from a great distance because you can still feel their presence through this overlapping morphic field or stretched morphic field. So I think that when you're walking with your pet, it gives you a chance not only for you and your pet's morphic field to connect in a deep way, but also the overarching field of nature to connect with you and your pet. So how do you take a spiritual dog walk? First of all, we'll have another long conversation about equipment in my T-Touch series that will be starting next week. But you need to find a collar or a harness that is comfortable for your dog. You cannot have a spiritual dog walk while your dog is pulling and uncomfortable on the leash because it's very hard for both of you to become focused when your dog is struggling to find balance because of ill-fitting equipment. So find a harness or a collar, I prefer a harness, that your dog is comfortable in. And then go out into the world, and today it's 20 degrees in New England and the wind is still blowing, but there's a kind of a difference when there's a deep snowfall or a cold, windy, dry day like this in the sounds of nature and in the experience of nature. And there's a glorious bright sun here today. So when you go out with your dog, sometimes I like to let the dog choose which direction we'll go. I can go to the left, the right, or up a hill. And I just go to the end of the driveway and see which way he's drawn. Often he'll turn left because that's the way to his walk buddy's house, his little cairn friend Coco who lives up the street. And sometimes Coco will join us on a walk, which makes Tristan very happy. So the first thing you do is allow your dog to choose where you might want to walk today. The next thing I do is I often do a heart hug, and as I showed you a few days ago, you just cross your hands over your heart, or when I'm holding my dog, one hand, and I take a deep breath in, imagining the face of a clock on my chest, starting at the 6, and I just make a circle and a quarter, and a deep breath in and out, and take my hand, release a little at the 9 after I do that circle and a quarter, And I just think about how much I appreciate nature and my dog as I do that heart hug. And I do this just when I get to the end of my driveway and sometimes before I'm even out the door. And then as you proceed to follow your dog, take what we call mindful steps. Now that can be a bit of a trigger word for people, a buzzword, mindfulness. But what that really means is pay attention to how you're walking. Notice what part of your foot hits the ground first. Notice if you're putting more weight on one side than another. Notice how hard it is to push off. Notice how much you bend your knee. Like really pay attention to how you're walking. And do the same for your dog. Observe his steps or her steps. Is she putting equal weight on all 4 feet? Is the sway in the hindquarters even on both sides? How much are the shoulders hiking up as she walks? Really observe how she's walking without judgment and just notice what's happening when she's walking. And the same with you. Try to time your steps with your dog's steps and see how close you are. Tristan is a little guy. He takes little steps. I have long legs, so I take big steps. But sometimes I try to count how many steps he takes with his front legs in the time that I take one big step with my 2 legs. And I try to be in sync with his walking. If you have the pleasure of a big dog, like my niece's dog Mila, you can actually time your steps with your dog's steps. So be careful about your steps and notice them. Notice differences in your steps. And then try to change your steps. If you notice you're walking more on one leg than another, try pushing more weight to the other side. Feel your own hips walking. Are you swaying equally side to side? And try to shift that. And try things like holding your breath, closing your eyes, and just become really aware of how you're moving. And notice that as you're noticing, that you will have relaxation coming over your body, and that will translate down the leash to your pet. Be aware of your breathing when you're doing mindful dog walking. Are you breathing deeply? Are you taking short, shallow breaths? Are you breathing in through your mouth and out through your nose? Really become aware of your breath. And then look down at your pet and notice how they are breathing. You can watch their sides, inhale and exhale. Tristan will often stop as we're walking and take some short sniffs and notice the deer or the chipmunks or the sound of the stream down the hill from where we walk. Or he'll stop and be very erect and take shorter breaths because he notices a dog nearby or a dog approaching. So pay attention to your breathing and your dog's breathing. And then as you're walking, see how much you can notice with all of your senses. What do you see? What do you see ahead of you, to the sides? What do you see behind you? What do you smell? If you open your mouth and take a deep breath of the air, is there a taste? What do you hear? And what can you touch in your hand with the wind or the trees or the leaves as you walk by, or perhaps your pet's fur? So use all of your senses to experience the world, and then look at your pet and notice the senses that they have. Are their paws walking on gravel, grass, snow, a hard road? Are they comfortable with that? Do they walk differently on the grass than they do on the road? And I love to watch what Tristan watches when we're walking. You learn so much more about the world around you when you see what your dog is looking at and what they're noticing. There are many animals I've seen on walks that I would not have noticed, that my horses or my dogs have seen well before I would have noticed them. So then also experience what your dog is smelling. So many great smells in the world. As I said, he's got a little girlfriend down the road named Coco, and wherever he heard her name, wherever she has done her business is always a fun place for Tristan to stop. And he's got another big friend up the road, and he notices where he's left, as we call it, pee mail, and Tristan will have an opportunity to pee on the same spot. So just notice what your dog's noticing with their senses. With a Corgi, we have these wonderful ears, so we can easily see where they're tipping their ears to hear things in the world. So see what your dog notices from his senses. And then look at your dog's point of view of the world. Tristan is about 8 inches high. Sometimes with his head up, he's 12 inches high. So what does the world look like from his point of view? I don't get down on my hands and knees when I'm walking and look at what he sees, but I do look really closely low to the ground and notice the different tiny plants and sticks and things that he sees as opposed to what I see up at my height of 5.5 feet. And this is a really fun thing to do when you have a dog that's really short, or even a dog that comes up to your waist, because the world looks really differently from their size. And there's wonderful work done by Temple Grandin about what it's like to be a steer going into a slaughterhouse, and she has really improved the humanity, the kindness, and how animals are slaughtered in a way that is much more unstressful to them than what we had before, because she looks at things from the animal's point of view. So it's a real treasure to be able to look at the world from the point of view of your pet, even if he's only 8 inches high. You can also notice how your dog is moving as he's trotting along. Dogs have that famous dog trot that seems like they can do it endlessly, but notice when he slows down or speeds up. Where I am, I go from a paved road to a unpaved road to a road that's been treated with oil, and I'm always intrigued at the differences in his gait as we change surfaces. And a lot of people get the chance to walk in the woods and notice how your dog navigates rocks and stumps and sticks in the trail. And then another thing you can do is try to feel your connection to your dog through the leash. Can you feel his breath? Can you feel his tension? And to do that, you need to have a connection through the leash. It can't just be drooping, and it can't be so tight that you're pulling your dog. So you need to have a gentle, light connection through the leash. And this is something that you might have to practice to get used to, but it really will help you feel a connection to your dog. And the reward of getting that gentle, light connection is that you can feel your dog through the leash. You can feel his breath. You can feel when he's tense, you can feel when he's relaxed, and then he can feel that from you. It's almost like that old-fashioned game with when you pretend you have a telephone and you have 2 paper cups with a string between you. That's kind of what it's like with your dog. The leash is your communication between you and the dog. So try to have that just light contact to experience what it's like to feel your dog at the other end of the leash. I like to sometimes close my eyes for a few steps and see if I can notice different things about my balance or my dog's balance if we're walking with closed eyes. This is really interesting to do where I live because I have a pretty steep hill, and if I close my eyes walking downhill, it's really interesting to notice the change in how I step, how my feet hit the ground, what muscles I'm using, what's my comfort level with walking downhill or up a steep hill. So these are the kinds of things that you can try to have a spiritual dog walk with your dog. The other thing that you can really concentrate on is just the experience, well, it's not even concentration, allow to come around you, is the experience of just being in nature, appreciating the trees. In my yoga journal a few months ago, we even had a brand new practice, yoga in the trees, spiritual yoga in the woods. And I'm like, well, trees have been here a long time. How have we forgotten that trees ground us, that trees are beautiful, unique beings? And there's lots of research now that trees, even of different species, are connected through their roots in the ground. And when one tree is hurt, the trees around it experience that, even if they're from a different species. And that's incredible. So I look at trees in a different way now. I see them as sentient beings, and I appreciate them in a way that I didn't before. And when I'm walking on their roots, I almost have to apologize. But sometimes they like that little bit of pressure because it helps things keep moving. So these are some of the things I do when I'm having a spiritual dog walk. And you don't have to go outside to do this if you live in a place where, you know, it's terrible and windy and cold and snowy out. You can even do a little bit of this just walking with your dog around your house. But it's so much better if you can get your dog out in nature and do it near the woods or in a field or in some beautiful place near your house, even around your yard, and just appreciate your dog and the time you get to spend with him in nature. It's a wonderful thing to do on a Sunday as a spiritual practice, but it's also great to do any day. If you've had a really stressful day at work, to do a spiritual dog walk is a good way to find your center, to regain your composure, to find your equanimity, and come back into your body and your connection with your pet in your life. So I'd just like to close today's talk about having a spiritual walk with your dog with a heart hug for Tristan. Oh, he says, this is very hard. I'm so short, Mom. So you just put your hand on your pet's chest and imagine a little clock there, and you're going to start at the 6 and make a circle and a quarter with your hand moving the skin on your pet's chest. And you take a deep breath in as you go up around the circle and exhale as you come down around the circle. And as I do this, I think for a minute how much I love my dog and how much I appreciate the many lessons I get every day from having a dog in my life. This is Sally Morgan, physical therapist and craniosacral therapist, and Tristan Corgi. I'm also the author of the book, Dances of the Heart, Connecting with Animals, where you can read more about spiritual dog walking, spiritual horse riding, and spiritual sitting in nature with your cat, even looking out the window from a comfortable chair in your house. I'd love to talk to you more about this at another time and talk more about riding your horse and having a spiritual ride, but today we're focusing on the dogs. Tristan had a great time at his fun dog show yesterday. He got a prize for his skunk costume, which he loves because it has a tail on it and he doesn't have a tail. And he also got a prize for doing his Russian dance, which you can see on our YouTube channel, Corgis Can Dance. It was not as good yesterday as it is in our video online, but we still had a great time, and we're really looking forward to the Corgi Beach Party in Auburn, Mass. this coming Saturday, where I will do Facebook Live from the Corgi Beach Party. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, and enjoy a walk with your pet in nature.